The Alien franchise is just as old as I am. I was born in 1979, the year the first movie came out. Obviously, I watched it years later, not really because of the horror factor, but for the sci-fi. I'm not a horror movie fan, but because the franchise appealed to my sci-fi sensibilities, I gave it a shot. I since watched every single one of the Alien franchise movies through the years, and I've come to realize that with each addition to the franchise, something was taken away. The more movies, the wider and broader the scope got. To be fair, after leaving the theater with my mom after watching Alien 3, I was kind of done. But after watching the teaser trailer for the Alien Romulus, I had a lot of hopes. So despite my deepest concerns, I did give it a shot. So is the movie any good? Let's find out. I'm Meffistoe. Like, share, and subscribe because this is my review of the movie Alien Romulus. Because this is a non-spoiler review, I will keep the details light. The story starts with showing us a big ship picking up fragments from the destroyed ship of the Nostromo. We only get hints of what it is, and if you haven't seen the first movie, you will have a sense of dread. For us old-timers, it's a little bit of a red flag, and the feeling is quite the same. Then we cut to a mining planet and a girl named Rain walking with her synth Andy to put her papers down and to finish her contract and get the hell out of that planet. Of course, because of company policy, she has to stay and keep working. Luckily, her friends found out there is a floating wreckage in space above the planet that might have cryopods, which will allow her and her friends to get off the planet. And dangerous as it is, she agrees to lend her synth for the job for a chance to be free. And this is where the problems actually begin. As far as an Alien movie goes, this is a good departure from the recent couple of films. This movie is much more contained, much more claustrophobic, and goes back to the basics of the sci-fi thriller rather than a full-on gore-fest horror. There are references to other movies in the past, but nothing that bogs you down with information where you have to do a little bit of homework and watch the previous films. But, and this is a big but, there are some elements that made my face go sour. More on that later. I do love the fact that this is a brand new crew of sorts, basically a bunch of nobodies. This to me harkens to the original movie where some cast members were well known and had significant parts in the past, but the main hero, the main character, is an unknown actress at the time, Sigourney Weaver. Off the bat, it was a little bit of a red flag because it easily could have turned into a Twilight situation in space, but it doesn't go that far, so that's okay. I absolutely adore that they curbed the entire CGI thing. I'm pretty sure it was a combination of set and CGI, but the interior shots felt like an old interior shots. It felt real. And I love the fact that they used old tech that looked like the 70s or early 80s tech. And this kind of matches the whole timeline of where this movie is actually placed. So you get a brand new film, but using old tech that was aged appropriately to where it's supposed to be. In terms of the acting, nobody was actually stellar, but the actor that kind of stood out was David Johnson, who played the synth Andy. Looking back at the franchise from Ash to Bishop to David, Andy was closer in nature to the early versions of the synth. And to me, it felt like the guy was having a great time making this movie. You'll know what I'm talking about when you see this. But this is where my criticism bone kind of lingers in. It was apparent that the creators of this movie love the franchise, know the lore, or at least did a little bit of research behind it. They did their absolute best to keep the established lore in the movies and develop their own script from that going forward. They told a self-contained looped story that ends where other movies can pick up and begin. I'm actually purposefully being cryptic here because every small little detail that I'm going to tell you will let you on quickly on what is going on, and that kind of breaks the mystery behind everything. But despite the good efforts of the writers, every so often they had to remind you that you are watching a part of the Alien franchise. There were story choices that were made, there were story beats that were made, and full-on sentences that were, let's say, obvious. So I felt like the directors or writers, or both, kind of cheated the audience and cheapened the experience. One of those cheats were so blatant, I really disliked it. I was so pissed off when they used something throughout the film that it just took me out of it. But most of the time, it was plenty of references to the other movies and some dialogue pieces that were a little bit cringy and really didn't fit within the context of this movie. especially if you're a fan of those films. I thought they felt ham-fisted and forced into it, and it could have been better to just leave them be. But putting that aside, my biggest complaint about this movie is how everything seems to be too convenient, and that the xenomorphs and the facehuggers were sometimes powerful and cunning, and sometimes ridiculously easy. So at the end of the day, and despite the score pushing me forward to be afraid or scared, I wasn't, which took the sting out of the thriller part of this movie. It wasn't up to the level of Alien Resurrection, where the action parts were a little bit too much and the xenomorphs were all over the place and some of them were CGI badly, but there was never a real sense of danger. There are some good minor jump scares, but not a lot of them. And just as a side note, if you have seen the trailer and you thought, well, a flashlight cannot do the things that they're trying to make it do, don't worry, there's an explanation. It's fine. It's really not an issue. There are some other crimes against filmmaking in this movie. Overall, not the best movie, nor is it actually bad. I was really hesitant on giving it a chance just because of the recent Alien movies, and I have to admit, it's better than them. But truth be told, the last good Alien movie in the franchise was actually Aliens back in '86, and none of them even gotten close since then. This particular movie is a solid mid-range for the franchise. Some elements are great, some are hilariously predictable, and the solutions to the problems were super convenient, which tells me a lot about its creators. Because if you look at Fede Alvarez's body of work, you'll start to pick up on a pattern. It is mostly established APs that he either remakes, reboots, or does a sequel for, and he mostly sticks to the horror thriller genre. So this movie was completely in his wheelhouse and falls under his vision. But his vision, despite the good things about it, feels like a cheap imitation of the original. I think it'll be super great for a young audience, repetitive and predictable for an older one. Because I fall under the latter, that was my experience. It's still better than Prometheus and Dark Covenant, so it's worth a watch, but it's not great. And I don't think you should expect anything more than that. I thank you for watching, and remember, hope is a good thing, maybe even the best of things, and no good thing ever dies. I'll see you on the next video.